The Ukraine war has unfolded in unexpected ways, defying initial expectations. President Vladimir Putin's plan for a swift invasion was met with fierce resistance from Ukraine, and instead of securing quick victories, Russia found itself up against international support for Ukraine and a heavily armed military. By May 2024, Ukraine had reclaimed more than half of the territory previously occupied by Russia, and Russia's forces were suffering significant casualties. In this analysis, we'll explore how Russia's initial strategy faltered, leading to an extended and costly conflict. Kharkiv, Russia's expensive battle. These are the war's highest documented numbers, and they're rising. The UK claims 500 Russian soldiers have died or been injured since February 2022. US estimates are more conservative. It says 35,000. However, Russia lost far more men than expected. As of September 2022, the country had 3,000 reservists in its army. Whatever number is correct, the reserve force is nearly gone. These claims come as Russia intensifies its attacks on Ukrainian forces in Kharkiv. Putin targets Ukraine's second-largest city strategically and symbolically. By seizing Ukraine's second city, Russia would win a propaganda triumph and lower Ukrainian morale. This success could reinforce the idea that its military can take Kyiv. Taking Kharkiv will strengthen Putin's position in ceasefire negotiations. Kharkiv has Ukraine's greatest natural gas reserves, making it vital to Ukraine's energy independence. It also boosts Ukraine's economy, third largest contributor to Ukraine's GDP in 2019, with 3% economics-wise. It trails only Dnipropetrovsk and Kyiv. Putin wants Kharkiv. He'll throw soldier after soldier against Ukrainian fortifications to take it, seemingly without regard for casualties. One quote from the New York Times piece is in the Kyiv Independent. Commanding officials seem unaware that they are sending infantry soldiers to die in this kind of warfare, which Russian soldiers have compared to being placed into a meat grinder. This leads us back to the video's opening question. This is happening why? Answers vary, starting with the most significant. Putin assumed that taking Kharkiv would work again since Russia had solved problems by throwing soldiers at them. Consider the Battle of Avdiivka. Russia fought from October 10, 2023 to February 17, 24. Russia captured the fortified town in 130 days, similar to Kharkiv. Continue to fire soldiers at it. According to Business Insider, a Russian military blogger estimated that Russia lost 16,000 personnel and 300 armored vehicles after seizing Avdiivka. Ukrainian military claims far higher numbers. It claims Russia lost 47,000 soldiers taking Avdiivka. Losses average 360 every day. That's lower than Russia's attempt to seize Kharkiv. Avdiivka is significantly smaller, so Putin may have scaled up his technique after seeing the meat grinder work before. The Bakhmut war hurt Russia too. After nearly a year of combat to reclaim the city, Russia won in May 2023 but lost hundreds of men. Newsweek stated that Russia lost 100,000 men in 4 months during its final push for Kharkiv, leaving it close to the 1,000 per day threshold it's hitting currently. Russian soldiers weren't the only casualties. Mercenaries also lost heavily. Wagner's Yevgeny Prigozhin said his organization lost 2,000 troops in the still. Russia captured Bakhmut and Avdiivka. It proved the meat grinder method worked. Ukrainian fortifications were weakened by soldiers' constant bombardment, forcing a retreat. Perhaps Pyrrhic victories, but victories nonetheless. Russia's approach in Kharkiv may replicate these two fights because it delivers outcomes, albeit at great cost. A problem exists. In June 2024, the Kyiv Independent reported that months of meat processing in Kharkiv have yielded little progress for Russia. Russia created a buffer zone along the Russia-Kharkiv border, making it harder for Ukraine to strike Russia, although it's hardly progressed. In June, Ukraine stopped Russia's onslaught. According to NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, they tried and failed. They gained little and paid a hefty price. The Kyiv Independent also observes that Russia's wave infantry tactics, as seen in Avdiivka and Bakhmut, have been a major benefit in the fight. Russia has more recruits than Ukraine because it has a larger population and military. The high casualty rate has compelled Russia to send poorly trained soldiers to the front. Putin's disrespect for people. Remember that, it'll matter later. Putin is content to keep throwing soldiers at Kharkiv, which is the second reason Russia loses 1,000 men every day. Putin seems unconcerned about losing soldiers as long as he wins. Putin's use of ex-convicts as soldiers shows his disregard for his people. Euronews explained this in October 2023 when discussing Denis Stepanov and Vladimir Putin. The former was arrested for destroying a Siberian house and killing 2 women. The latter had a drunken dispute with his wife that turned violent. Fighting worsened until Vladimir Putin injured his wife's 4-year-old kid. How does this relate to Putin's contempt for his people? Both soldiers were Wagner mercenary group veterans, which Putin has gladly sent to Ukraine. Euronews called this the tip of the iceberg, saying that this group has been accused of murder, rape, and robbery of Ukrainian citizens. It also tortures and executes war deserters. This describes Wagner's savagery in the Ukraine war. Former commander Yevgeny Prigozhin allegedly employed hundreds of prisoners to strengthen his ranks. Each was promised an amnesty for their service. But as we found, 2,000 died in the Bakhmut assault. In September 2022, Putin said that convicts who fight Ukraine had forgiven themselves in his eyes and in Russian society. Putin said they made faults, but they died for the country and redeemed themselves. Convicts gave their lives. Several Bakhmut survivors stated Russian servicemen were losing like vermin, while another said he packed a grenade in his vest to detonate if he was captured by Ukraine's military. These criminals were all taken to the meat grinder because Putin didn't care who he sent to Ukraine or what they did. He didn't care enough about his folks back home to safeguard them from returning criminals. He endangered Russians by pardoning them for fighting in Ukraine. Euronews reported 2 cases of returning soldiers harming Russian residents. As long as Putin wins the war, nothing else matters. In November 2023, The Hill examined Putin's recruitment strategies. It states that while some Russian soldiers serve Putin's cause out of patriotism, many more fight because they have no other choice. They're right. Russia has increased punishments for anyone who refuses to fight or surrender in Ukraine. Putin is so desperate to bring as many people into Ukraine as possible that he's ready to damage the lives of those who don't want to fight. The punishment situation is so harsh that US authorities claimed Russia was executing retreating soldiers during the Avdiivka operation in October 2023. Soldiers are warned to fight Ukraine or die at Russia's hands. Putin's recruitment is racist. The Hill reports that Russia's general staff focuses its recruitment efforts on non-ethnic Russian regions, which are poor due to their separation from the mainland. Putin may believe he can purchase individuals to die for his cause by promising money to recruit from these places. It all amounts to a leader eager to send anyone to Ukraine's front lines, which gets us back to Russia losing 1,000 people each day. Putin's indifferent. He can replace Russia's losses because his country has enough people. Russia's commander has proved he'll arrest conscripts who refuse to fight to win his war, regardless of the long-term consequences. He'll hire everyone who will fight for Russia, a haphazard method to stocking his forces and a despotic war strategy. Putin controls Russia, thus Russians will fight. Russia will attract them for the same reason. This indifference to the fate of hundreds of soldiers Putin sends to the front lines leads to our third reason: Russia loses 1,000 men per day. Training. Poor training affects Russia's military and its capacity to conduct operations. Russia's military training standards have been criticized since the Ukraine war began, but they escalated in its second year. In May 2023, Newsweek examined a British intelligence study that indicated Russia's ground forces were mostly poorly trained mobilized reservists. In September 2022, Putin forced 300,000 conscripts onto the front lines. The report also adds that these reservists are forced to use outdated equipment, leaving them unprepared and with unreliable weaponry. This poor training and the loss of numerous elite units in the early months of the war provide Russia with operational challenges. Veterans are dying, leaving inadequately prepared reservists in charge. Because of their lack of preparation, reservists are less capable of complex operations and more likely to die or be wounded on the front lines. Russia has changed its soldier training due to the high death toll. The December 2023 Newsweek report claims Russia is revamping its training methods to prepare recruits for heavy combat activities on the front lines. Russian active duty ground troops lost up to 87% by December 2023, with surges in the Avdiivka and Bakhmut attacks. Newsweek quotes Kremlin-aligned Russian tabloid Izvestia, which claims Russia's training is being altered to assist soldiers survive in adverse situations. Note the word survive, not win. Plekhanov, Russia University, Associate Professor, Colonel Alexander Perenziev, said the draft training reforms will help Russia identify its troops' weaknesses. Perenziev believes physical training helps soldiers and officers complete military missions and endure challenging conditions. Due to this strategy, Russia may reward soldiers who excel in physical training with a 15 to 100% salary bonus. These measures imply Russia understands its training gaps, but they may be too late. Worse, these adjustments may not apply to all Russian soldiers in Ukraine. In March 2024, Business Insider reported on a Washington Post piece about Ukrainian soldiers' Avdiivka experiences. The soldiers reported that many Russian soldiers were confused about their roles and had major inconsistencies in their performance and equipment. According to Ukrainian marksman Shved, some had uniforms and simple firearms, while others had more advanced equipment. Other soldiers said Russia sent waves of inexperienced, poorly trained, and elderly forces into attacks at least 3 times a day. Putin's meat grinder tactic seems to justify losing dozens of soldiers to kill one Ukrainian. The Institute for the Study of War investigated wave theory. Russia alternates its waves, it argues. If the first has inexperienced and poorly trained soldiers, the second will have more capable veterans. Putin appears to be utilizing different wave attacks to soak up Ukrainian ammunition, then experienced waves to deal more damage, in hopes that Ukraine will be weaker. This strategy stops Russia's rapid loss of elite and experienced personnel and explains its poor training. The falling waves take little training. They merely need to absorb Ukraine's gunfire so the more experienced soldiers can harm. It worked in Avdiivka, but thousands of soldiers died. Putin appears to be employing it to seize Kharkiv. Thus, a convergence of causes is explaining Russia's daily 1,000 soldier loss. Inexperienced and poorly trained operators are fed into the meat grinder to make place for more experienced operators. That tactic works only because Putin doesn't care about his men on the field. If they win, Russia's loss doesn't matter. In this context, the Kremlin's training reform discourse is irrelevant. They'll still lose thousands attacking Ukrainian positions. This is another reason Russia loses 1,000 men daily. Low spirits. Russian strategy's viability is doubtful. Lost soldiers at 1,000 per day might have serious consequences for the battlefield and Putin's power at home. Will this unrelenting approach win or weaken Russian support? Leave a remark and see you in the future video.